The Young and the Restless Spoilers Shock. In the intricate game of power and influence that often defines Genoa City, few players are as seasoned and ruthless as Victor Newman. His latest victory in the ongoing struggle between the Newmans and the Abbotts was nothing short of masterful, solidifying his place as the kingpin of the town's elite. This time, the battlefield was a courtroom, and the prize was custody of young Harrison, the son of Kyle Abbott. The victory was bittersweet, however, as it came at the expense of his own grandson, Kyle, a man Victor had every intention of bending to his will. Victor's strategy had been simple, but devastatingly effective. By helping Summer win custody of Harrison, he had not only scored a major win against the Abbotts, but also positioned himself as the puppet master in Kyle's life. Court's decision to share custody between Summer and Kyle was a calculated move by Victor, a way to keep Kyle on a short leash. With Harrison as both a bargaining chip and a hostage, Victor made it clear to Kyle, align with him. He would have everything he desired. Cross him, and he would lose it all. Victor's words echoed in Kyle's mind, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. "Stand by my side, Kyle," Victor had said, his tone both commanding and reassuring. "Do as I say, and you'll have everything you've ever wanted." It was a proposition that left Kyle torn. On one hand, he craved the power and security Victor promised. On the other, he could feel the shadow of betrayal looming over him. Betrayal of his own family, a father he had grown to resent. Victor was right. Kyle's naivety had been his downfall, making him an easy pawn in the older man's game. But the realization that he was being used to destroy his own father, Jack Abbott, was a bitter pill to swallow. Jack, for his part, was devastated. Watching his own son fall deeper into Victor's clutches was a pain he could barely endure. Jack had always believed in Kyle, had always wanted the best for him, but now he found himself facing the harsh reality that his son saw him not as a father, but as an adversary. It was a heartbreaking betrayal, one that left Jack questioning his own role in the feud that had consumed their lives. This was no time for Jack to dwell on regret. The war between the Newmans and the Abbotts was far from over, and Jack knew he had to focus on the battles ahead. Victor had played his cards brilliantly, but Jack was not one to back down. He resolved to fight for his family, for Abbott, and for everything the Abbotts had built over generations. Kyle, meanwhile, was caught in a web of anger and frustration. He desperately wanted to return to Abbott, to reclaim his place in the family business and restore some semblance of normalcy. Victor had made his position clear: betray him, and Kyle would never see Harrison again. It was a threat that chilled Kyle to the bone, forcing him to consider the unthinkable. Harrison was everything to Kyle, the one thing that kept him grounded in a world of chaos. The thought of losing his son was unbearable, yet the idea of being Victor's puppet was equally repugnant. Victor's manipulation was as brutal as it was effective. By dangling Harrison's well-being as a constant threat, he ensured Kyle's compliance. But compliance came at a price: Kyle's freedom, his loyalty, and ultimately his soul. As the days passed, Kyle's resentment festered, growing into a deep-seated rage. He seethed at the thought of how Victor and Summer had conspired against him, using his own son as leverage. It wasn't long before the anger clouded his judgment, fueling thoughts of revenge. Kyle began to entertain dangerous ideas, visions of retribution that grew darker with each passing day. In his mind, there was no room for forgiveness, only for the annihilation of those who had wronged him. Victor and Summer were at the top of his list. The notion that he could strike back, he could destroy them both, took root in his heart. The idea of bringing Victor down, crushing him so thoroughly that he would never recover, became an obsession. And with that obsession came a terrifying realization: Kyle might be willing to go to any lengths to achieve it. The thought of a physical confrontation, of perhaps even killing Victor, began to seem like a viable solution in Kyle's increasingly unhinged state. But Kyle was on the brink of making a catastrophic mistake. His anger, though justified, was leading him down a path from which there would be no return. Victor was a formidable adversary, one who had outmaneuvered countless opponents over the years. If Kyle acted on his rage, if he allowed his hatred to drive him to violence, he would not only destroy his own life, but also risk losing Harrison forever. Deep down, Kyle knew he needed help. He couldn't take on Victor alone, He wasn't strong enough, wasn't cunning enough. The only way he could hope to reclaim his life, to protect his son, and to find a way out of the nightmare Victor had trapped him in, was to return to Jabba. He needed his family, needed Jack, even if he couldn't admit it to himself. The question was, could he swallow his pride, set aside his anger, and ask for the help he so desperately needed? Or would he let his rage consume him, pushing him to the point of no return? As Kyle stood at the crossroads of his life, choices before him were stark. He could either seek out Jack, confess his mistakes, and hope that his father could forgive him and help him fight Victor, or he could let his anger drive him into a confrontation that would end in tragedy. Stakes had never been higher, and the path Kyle chose would determine not just his own fate, but the fate of everyone he loved. The battle lines were drawn and the clock was ticking. Kyle Abbott had to decide, would he be the man who fought for his family, or the man who let his anger destroy them all?